I'd like to call the meeting to order, please.
Put it on.
Chairman Lofton, would you lead us in the invocation, please, sir?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as nature awakens from its winter sleep to display its beauty, we come before you with a grateful heart that helps us to see what is there instead of what is not, to thank you for what we have instead of what we do not, to be thankful for what we can do instead of what we cannot. We're also thankful for all those who serve here in our community and who serve abroad to keep us free, to keep us safe, and to provide for us when we cannot, to lift us up when we are down, to share our sorrows and our joys, to keep us warm when we are cold. We give thanks for the beauty and the bounty of this great county and the opportunities it provides. Guide our actions tonight as we deliberate the issues before us to make responsible decisions that will enhance the quality of our community life. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Supervisor McCarthy, would you lead us in the pledge, please, sir?
You'll please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adoption of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The agenda is adopted as presented. The consent agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
No, sir.
All right. Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion.
Second?
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consent agenda is adopted as presented. This is the portion of the meeting set aside for citizen comment on any issue that is not subject to a public hearing. That is an agenda item. That would be budget. So, did we have sign-ups?
Mr. Chairman, there are no signatures.
Would anyone like to comment concerning the budget? This is your only opportunity until the end of the meeting. Thank you. Seeing none. Board of Supervisors comments, are there any? Hearing none. Move on. Committee appointments, social services.
Mr. Chairman, I will have one in the next meeting. There are a couple candidates, but we have not made a decision.
Thank you, sir. Board of Building Appeals, I think we're still looking for someone.
Mr. Chairman, we have a couple of applications pending, and we should be bringing those forward soon.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All right, sir. Would you give me a hand, Mr. Vice Chairman? Mr. Beckley, if you'd join us up front, please, sir. Thank you, sir. Yep. Camera's up there. The Employee of the Month Award Program recognizes county employees as an important and valuable resource. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors, it's my pleasure to present Jonathan D. Keckley as Employee of the Month for March of 2018. Jonathan D. Keckley serves as a correctional officer, too, with the Northwestern Regional Adult Detention Center. On January 20th, 2018, Officer Beckley was supervising a nurse sick call with an inmate. During the sick call, the nurse removed the inmate's sock and discovered a plastic baggie containing a white rock-looking substance. Officer Beckley immediately called the on-duty watch commander and went to where the inmate was housed to assist in searching the inmate's living space to ensure there were no other drugs or items the inmates are not permitted to have in their possession. While searching the inmate's bed area, Officer Beckley discovered papers containing the same drug found previously during the sick call. Officer Beckley immediately confiscated the papers and maintained custody of them until he could pass them to be secured in the evidence safe. Officer Beckley's dedication, perseverance, and follow-through helped ensure the safety and security of the facility, and ensured that the illegal drugs stemming from this incident were removed from the facility. Jonathan D. Beckley is hereby recognized as the Frederick County Employee of the Month for April 2018. The Board of Supervisors extends its gratitude to Jonathan for his outstanding performance and dedicated service and wishes him continued success in future endeavors. Please join me in congratulating him. Request from the Commissioner of Revenue for refunds.
Mr. Chairman, we have two refund requests. The first is for Shenandoah Refrigeration in the amount of $3,283.76. This is for exoneration of business license fees due to a miscalculation of the taxes due. Do you want to handle them individually, or you want me to go to the next?
We can do them simultaneously if you'd like.
Okay, the next one is for Duncan Pollitt, and this is for exoneration of real estate taxes for 2015 through 17 for, due to a reduced assessment as a result of a fire on the property. Both these have been reviewed and authorized by the county attorney.
Good. How would the board like to handle these two refunds?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the refund to Shenandoah Refrigeration in the amount of $3,283.76 and a refund to Duncan H. Pollitt for $3,946.74 and the corresponding supplemental appropriation.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Both refunds and supplemental appropriations are approved. Supervisor Trout?
I want to disclose for the record, relative to this item and pursuant to the State and Local Government Conflict of Interest Acts, that I am employed by Frederick County Public Schools as a teacher, and therefore am a member of a group who are or may be affected by the item, and that I am able to participate in the transaction fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So this is adoption of the fiscal year 18-19 budget and appropriations and setting the 2018 tax rates.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to...
Supervisor Slaughter?
Yes, I move that the board adopt a real estate tax rate, and as to aircraft, a personal property tax rate as follows. 61 cents per hundred of assessed value on real estate, 1 penny per hundred of assessed value on aircraft having a registered empty gross weight equal to or greater than 20,000 pounds that are not owned or operated by scheduled air carriers recognized under federal law, and 50 cents per hundred of assessed value on all other aircraft.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
The second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Lofton?
I will say that there's been a lot of hard work put into this budget, and I think it's close. However, even though I am in favor of increasing the tax rate on aircraft below 20,000 pounds, I will vote against the tax increase as proposed.
Further discussion? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Trout?
although I support a 1-cent tax increase, I will not be supporting this budget because I do not believe it meets the needs of our community, nor does it address the wishes of our constituents. Simply put, 1 cent is not enough. It does not allow us to fully fund the school division's budget, the sheriff's budget, or address our capital needs. Numerous constituents came before us during the budget hearing and asked this board to invest in our community. Not only does this budget not invest in our community, it actually sets us up for failure in the future as our growing community surpasses our infrastructure. We cannot continue to build houses and bring people into our community without increasing the budget for our local services. More people means more services. Sadly, this budget's not proactive, it's reactive, which will cause our quality of life to decline in the future. That's not the future that I want for Frederick County or the constituents of Shawnee, so I will not be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're ready to vote? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
No.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
No.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Resolution?
Mr. Chairman, in light of recent work sessions, we have a situation where we have a resolution that was included in your agenda, which differs slightly from a resolution which we've prepared as a result of the work session that was held Monday evening, April the 9th. What I'd like to do is just, if I could, real briefly point out the differences in the two. The resolution which resulted from Monday's work session is on the table in front of you. That resolution has some figures that are slightly different. Both what's in your agenda and what's before you anticipated the 61-cent tax rate. So the difference is really in how the funds derived were appropriated. The resolution before you on your desk, the general operating fund has been increased by $865,000 from $180,603,228 to $181,468,228. The difference is $465,000 is taken from fund balance and increases that general operating. So the amount taken from fund balance goes from 1.1 million to 1.9. That's the first significant change. The other is in the school's operating fund. In the resolution that was before you tonight, the school operating fund is decreased by $865,000. So it goes from $169,320,680 to $168,455,680. The final difference from the add and the initial resolution is that the school's capital projects fund is increased by $2.3 million, from $1 million to $3.3 million. So again, those figures are the difference between what was advertised and what's in the agenda that was produced prior to the meeting and what you have before you as a result of the work session.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Slaughter?
I would like to offer a motion for adoption of the resolution that by consensus was agreed upon at the Board of Supervisors work session on Monday, April the 9th, 2018. A copy of the resolution has been placed at our station. And with that being said, I would make a motion that we adopt the resolution, the alternate budget resolution for fiscal year 2018 through fiscal year 2019.
I've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Lofton?
I would like to say that, again, some hard work is going into this final budget resolution, and while I agree in general with the budget resolution, I think it puts more money towards capital as well as keeping the operating near what the needs are. But since I have voted no against the tax rate, I will abstain from this vote.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Dunn?
This alternate resolution that we're talking about, for the record, increases money that's going to the school operating funds by 5.36%, and it increases by approximately $8.5 million, the dollar amount. So this is an effort to try to bridge two competing interests. We're a growing community. We have some other ideas on how to raise revenue to meet that growth. This is going to buy us about a year's worth of time to try to solve some of these problems. So just recognize that this is an increase by the numbers in operating budget for the school, and it also tries to address some of the school's capital needs, which they stated they urgently needed, 2.5 or 2.7 million. This will provide 2.3 million. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Slaughter,
is it appropriate to offer comments now or after our vote?
whichever you'd prefer.
Well, I'm happy for us to take our vote first, and then I'd like to make a few comments, if I may.
If it's to the budget,
Yes, sir, it
why
is.
don't we do it while we're discussing that item?
All right.
Thank you.
Just a few comments in general about the budget process. First of all, I really and truly want to thank everybody who has been involved in this budget process. It has been a tremendous amount of work. I especially wanted to thank Supervisor McCarthy and Chairman DeHaven for reaching out to Frederick County Public Schools Board Chairman Dr. Lamanna. I also want to thank Supervisor Dunn for all of his efforts with spreadsheets and trying to keep us on track with a lot of the numbers that have been presented. And I certainly don't want to miss anyone sitting here by not singling you out, but there have been countless hours put in by everyone on this board to adopt and get to a point of hopefully adopting this budget. When we started budget deliberations in December, I believed that the $10.3 million in additional funds available to spend, which was derived from $6 million in organic growth, primarily from real estate and personal property taxes, and a $4 million in land value reassessments conducted last year, would have balanced this budget. This equates to a 10-cent plus tax increase in revenue. This budget has evolved as we have moved forward with it. As all of us know, sitting here, state legislators are still in the process of adopting the Commonwealth of Virginia's budget. Typically, we would know what those numbers are before we adopt our budget tonight. However, we sit here and we still do not. Coupled by the fact that we do not know whether Medicaid expansion will be a reality or not, with initial cost to Frederick County estimated at somewhere between $400,000 to $500,000. Potentially another unfunded mandate that redirects critical tax dollars from public safety and education. As this budget has evolved into another process, we have heard from the schools that they would want their critical school capital needs addressed. Typically, we have addressed these needs after our fiscal year ends. However, in an effort to address these needs while the students are on summer break, and those needs being a northbound turn lane at 522 North, HVAC at Jameswood High School and Apple Pie Ridge, partial roof replacement, repair, Dow J. Howard and Jameswood High School athletic building, fire alarm Bass Hoover, and renovating tennis courts at Sharando High School. As I said, typically capital needs have been addressed from fund balance over the past decade, with the exception of last year, which was done during the budget process. If this resolution is adopted, Frederick County Public Schools will receive an additional $2.3 million over the advertised budget for capital. Additionally, the budget increases the county's local contribution to the school's operating budget by $5 million, and at the very least, with the Senate version of the budget that is being looked at, the state expected increase would be an additional $3 million to the schools. a total of $8 million more dollars in school operating, or an additional $588 per student based on enrollment. Having said that, I am certainly ready to move forward with a vote on this budget, but I do believe that this budget addresses public safety, or at least addresses the most of the needs, and provides for a substantial reduction in the use of fund balance. Last year, we had used $7.9 million out of fund balance. This year's proposal is, with this alternate resolution, is $1.9 million. So while it doesn't address every single want or need, I do feel like that it makes a great attempt at trying to address those most critical needs. We still have a lot of work to do. And that concludes my comments, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Supervisor McCarthy.
In my opinion, this budget is far from perfect. On one side, we have a constituency that says that we need to raise taxes even more than we have, or we're anticipating. On the other, we have a constituency that says we need to rein in spending and cut taxes. The fact of the matter is we are a diverse county with many diverse viewpoints. But one thing we can all agree on, I think, is that we have school buildings that are falling into disrepair, or are on the verge of falling into disrepair. For the last several meetings, we as supervisors have heard story after story of how badly Ayler Middle School is. I have constituents in Gainsborough District who have similar concerns about the future of James Wood High School. We've been told by the superintendent of schools that this year's budget proposal would fund approximately $500,000 in maintenance, but that the budget does not cover approximately $300,000 in other known maintenance costs at our existing schools. When the public advertisement for this year's proposed budget was published, the school board very clearly indicated that the capital requests were a critical need, and they were concerned that these things were not being funded. The school board chairman indicated that he was very concerned that the heating and air conditioning system at James Wood might not last throughout the next year. With these facts in mind, this board will be voting to approve or disapprove a budget that will greatly increase the funds available to the schools to fix and replace those critical capital needs as expressed by the school board. Yes, the operating budget of the school is less than requested by the school board, but it is still a substantial increase over last year's operating budget. It's my opinion, and the opinion of many, many residents of this county, that before we spend funds on new programs, we should be sure that we are taking care of the public facilities which have been entrusted to the county by the taxpayers. Ayler is a stark reminder of what happens when a facility maintenance is ignored. We cannot allow this type of neglect to occur with any of our other schools in the future. This is why, despite my reluctance to do so, I plan to vote in favor of this budget, and I did vote in favor of the 1-cent tax increase. After hearing all the public comments about the neglect that has occurred at Ayler and potentially is happening at other schools, I am of the conviction that we must take action now to ensure the most critical needs are funded in order to protect the investment of our taxpayers. I stated several weeks ago that I would not support a tax increase unless I was assured the critical needs of the capital are taken care of immediately, and I believe that this budget meets that criteria. This budget gets us as close as we can get to in this budget cycle to taking care of the critical needs of the school capital budget request. But the capital budget request is only half of the story. The school system has time and again had operating funds left over at the end of the year. I appreciate that the school isn't spending those funds on non-essential items, but I would encourage the schools to please use those available funds to fully fund the maintenance of our schools. For the sake of the children who spend their days in those schools, for the sake of the teachers and the staff working in those schools, and for the sake of the taxpayers who have to pay for new infrastructure, please utilize those funds to fully cover the maintenance of our facilities. As soon as this meeting is over, this Board of Supervisors will begin discussions on how best to remedy the situation at Ayler, and it's a situation that must be addressed quickly. In order to accomplish that task, and in order to tackle the challenges that face our school system in the future, it will require a better working relationship between our school board and this Board of Supervisors. I personally met with School Board Chairman Dr. Lamanna and pledged my time, effort, and support of any measure that will encourage more open and cooperative communication and work between our two boards. If we are to be responsive to the needs of our community, then we will need to move beyond the political polarization that is affecting so much of our modern lives today. We need to recognize that despite the fact that there are many compelling interests in our community, that at the end of the day, we're all trying to do what is in the best interest of the people of Frederick County. Hopefully, by starting our conversation from that point of commonality, we can work to find solutions rather than fight over scraps at the table. I've lived here my whole life, and I have faith that if we work together, that we can find solutions that we're looking for. And with that faith in our community, I'm looking forward to starting a new conversation after this meeting with all of our county agencies and with our constituents on ways to serve the people of this county better moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Ready to vote? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton abstains.
Abstain.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
No.
Chair votes aye, the motion carries, and the budget is adopted as amended. All right, that will bring us to conditional use permit under tab H.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's my pleasure this evening to present conditional use permit 0318 for Trumpet Vine Farms, which was submitted for the use of a residential lot for the establishment of a special event facility in the RA Rural Areas Zoning District. The 68-acre property is located at 266 Vaucluse Road in Stevens City and is identified with property identification number 85A6C in the Bat Creek Magisterial District. Again, this property is on Vaucluse Road, and it is presently zoned RA Rural Areas. The current land use is residential, and the proposed use is a special event facility for weddings and other similar type events. Direct your attention to the screen. The subject property is outlined in black and highlighted in yellow. It is generally west of Valley Pike, and again, here is the property frontage on Vaucluse Road. This applicant, Trumpet Vine Farms, has been operating a special event facility for weddings and other similar type events since 2012 under the county's annual festival permit process. The applicant received a festival permit by the Board of Supervisors for calendar year 2018 at their March 14th meeting. The CUP application proposes use of an existing outdoor pavilion with retractable sides and an existing storage building for special events, allow the use of temporary tents to accommodate larger gatherings, the use of temporary restroom facilities to be brought in for each event and removed thereafter, use of outside catering where no food will be prepared on the site, use of an existing gravel parking area to accommodate guests, and the special events may accommodate up to 450 people. Again, here's an overview of the applicant's site. For orientation, Vaucluse Road is generally along here. The applicant lives on the property in the owner's residence, and the event pavilion is separate from the dwelling unit and includes a designated driveway, the outdoor pavilion, outdoor space for tents and other gatherings, and the designated parking. This proposed conditional use is generally consistent with the policies in the 2035 Comprehensive Plan, which supports opportunities for agritourism and agribusiness in our rural areas. The Board of Supervisors approved special event facilities as a conditional use in the Rural Areas Zoning District in May of 2017, and the applicant has agreed to comply with all review agency comments, including site access, compliance with building and fire safety code, and the proposed use is consistent with the county's policies and regulations as it pertains to special event facilities. Should the Board of Supervisors find this use to be appropriate, the Planning Commission recommended the following conditions at their April 4th meeting. All review agency comments shall be complied with at all times. An illustrative sketch plan in accordance with Article 8 of the Frederick County Zoning Ordinance shall be submitted to and approved by Frederick County prior to the establishment of the use. A commercial entrance, including recordation of the site distance easement, shall be permitted and completed within 1 year of approval of this conditional use permit. That events shall start no earlier than 10 a.m. and all events and related activities shall conclude by midnight. Events may accommodate up to and not to exceed 450 persons, and they would be afforded one monument-style sign with a maximum sign area not to exceed 50 square feet and not to exceed 10 feet in height. Any expansion or modification of this use would require the approval of a new conditional use permit by the Board of Supervisors. Following a public hearing this evening, staff is seeking a decision from the Board of Supervisors on this conditional use permit. The applicant, Mr. DeMarchi Spears, representing Trumpet Vine Farms, is here this evening as well, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Questions, anyone?
I have one question.
Supervisor Slaughter.
In reading VDOT's comments, one of the comments was that they would want the applicant to obtain a site distance easement within 1 year. If the applicant is not able to acquire the site distance easement, then where are we with this CUP? It doesn't appear that it's one of the conditions.
That would be, the first condition specifies that they should comply with all review agency comments. So in the failure to comply with those comments, we would have to bring it back to the board for revocation. I'll let the applicant speak to the work that he's currently doing to work with VDOT to address those comments.
Thank you.
Other questions, anyone? Thank you, sir. Mr. Spears, anything you'd like to add, sir?
I'm just here to answer any kind of questions or concerns as far as the site distance.
If you'd come to the microphone, please, sir. Thank you.
As far as the site distance, I have brought the site distance in. I just need to confirm one side with just making sure that it's okay with the neighboring property or whatever. But if it should be a problem, if need be, I can move the driveway a little bit.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed conditional use permit? Anyone at all? Anyone? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. How would the board like to handle this one? It's Back Creek.
Mr. Chairman, as Mr. Klein has pointed out, Mr. Spears has operated a special event facility there for over 5 years. I received just one complaint about that, and the person who lodged that complaint is no longer in the neighborhood. So that being said, I would move for approval of conditional use permit number 03-18 for Trumpet Vine Farms Special Event Facility.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarty?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Will bring us to, under tab I, additions to Agriculture and Forestal District. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. There's two requests before you tonight and, for the additions to the South Frederick Agricultural and Forest District. It's a total of 11 parcels of land totaling 527.61 acres. Currently, the South Frederick Agricultural and Forestal District contains 6,248.71 acres. The most recent renewal was in 2016. The requested additions would increase this district to 6,776.32 acres. The first request before you tonight, Mr. Chairman, and the board, and we handle them both together. They're in the same family. Obviously, the board's going to have to vote on each one. So the first request is from Roy and Loretta McDonald. It's a request to add 6 parcels to the South Frederick Agricultural Forestal District of a total of 351.8 acres. If we could turn your attention to the map on your left, that's outlined in black is for that Ag and Forestal District. The parcels are going to be taken in. The second request is for Jason and Jennifer McDonald, and this is a request for 5 parcels, again, to the South Frederick Agricultural and Forestal District with a total of 175.81 acres. And again, the map to your left outlines the parcels that will be included in the Agricultural and Forestal District. This is the South Frederick Agricultural and Forest District as we see today. Outlined, if you can see in the red a little bit in the bottom there, are all the parcels that are before you on these 2 applications to be in addition to the Ag and Forestal District. It meets all the requirements of the Ag and Forestal District. It's within the mile radius of the district. And these 2 applications were taken to the Agriculture District Advisory Committee, or ADACT, who considered these requests at their meeting in January 23rd, 2018. They unanimously recommended that all 11 parcels be added to that district. The Planning Commission reviewed this recommendation and approved the additions at their meeting at March 7th, 2018. Staff is seeking a decision from the Board of Supervisors on the addition of these parcels. The two actions needed for the additions are, request number one is for Roy and Loretta McDonald, 6 parcels total on 351.8 acres. And the second request is for Jason and Jennifer McDonald, 5 parcels containing 175.81 acres. Mr. Chairman, I'll answer any questions you or any board members may have to this addition to the South Frederick Agricultural and Forestry District. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Mr. Chairman, anyone? Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning either one of these applications? Anyone at all? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. We should take these separately, and I think they're both in Back Creek as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me say that I appreciate the owners of these properties being good stewards of our prime agricultural land in the county. I think it's a wonderful move that they're adding this to the agricultural and forestry district. I think it helps, as I've said, preserve the agricultural industry and their agricultural heritage in Frederick County. With that being said, I would like to make a motion to approve the addition of the South Frederick Agricultural and Forestry District, the 6 parcels located at 364 Carson Lane by Roy and Loretta McDonald.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And second. Is there any discussion? Anyone? All right. Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Supervisor.
Mr. Chairman, I would also move to approve the 5 parcels located at 388 Vaucluse Road for Jason and Jennifer McDonald into the South Frederick Agricultural and Forestry District.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. All right, that will bring us to Master Development Plan 0118.
Yes, good evening again, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is an information discussion and action item for the Carball Business Center, and this is a proposal to develop approximately 107 acres of land zoned M1 light industrial for warehousing and light industrial type uses in the Back Creek Magisterial District. This property is located southeast of Shady Elm Road, Route 651, and generally northwest of the existing CSX Railroad. Can I draw your attention to the screen? It's an overview of the Carball Business Center site. The property is highlighted in black and yellow. And again, for reference, you have Shady Elm Road, generally runs along the northwest property boundary, and the CSX Railroad that bounds the property on its southern perimeter. You will recall that these properties were rezoned in late 2017 with rezoning application 0417, which took 107 acres of property that was zoned RA, rural areas, and transitioned it to M1, light industrial. As part of this rezoning application, the applicant agreed to proffer a 60-foot right-of-way reservation along Shady Elm Road, 20 feet of right-of-way for future Renaissance Drive. They've proffered to allow a maximum of 2 commercial entrances from Renaissance Drive, and they've proffered to include a Category C full-screen buffer along Shady Elm Road and provided landscaping and street trees along Renaissance Drive. Here's the master development plan as provided by the applicant, and call your attention to the 60-foot right-of-way reservation along what is now Shady Elm Road. This also denotes on the plan set the requirement for a Category C full-screen buffer that buffers the industrial property from the adjacent residential property, and the 20-foot right-of-way reservation for what will become future Renaissance Drive. This includes the 2 commercial entrances, a limit to 2 commercial entrances, and also the proposed landscaping in the form of street trees. As part of this master development plan, the applicant is requesting a waiver of our subdivision ordinance, Chapter 144-24C, to allow for future subdivision of lots within the property to be accessed by an internal private streets extending from Renaissance Drive. The master development plan for Caldwell Business Center is generally consistent with the requirements of our zoning ordinance, and it's in conformance with the proffers and associated generalized development plan included with rezoning application 0417. This item was presented to the Planning Commission for discussion on March the 14th, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the subdivision waiver request. This master development plan is presented to the Board of Supervisors as an information item, and staff is requesting that the Board of Supervisors take action on the requested waiver to Chapter 144-24C. Following this presentation to the Board of Supervisors, staff will proceed with the approval of the master development plan. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Tim Stowe is here representing the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Stowe? Any questions of either gentleman? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Supervisor
If-
Lofton.
If I may, a question of Mr. Klein. When we talk about being able to subdivide with selling off other lots, I want to make sure that I understand correctly, this is zone M1?
Correct. The entire property is zoned
And
M1.
So none of this property can be developed as a residential? Those lots would have to conform with that zoning, is that correct?
Yes, sir, you are correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. So this is a public hearing? No, it isn't. I'm sorry, never mind. Okay.
Need a
so
waiver?
We are looking for a motion concerning the waiver request.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Lofton.
I would move for approval of the waiver of Section 144-24C of the subdivision ordinance to allow for the future division of lots with access provided by private streets extending from Renaissance Drive made by Caldwell Business Center to Master Development Plan number 01-18.
All right, I've heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Anyone? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries and the waiver is granted. This will bring us to an ordinance amendment. Mr. Klein,
Yes.
welcome.
I will keep my remarks brief, as you all have seen this item previously. This is a proposed amendment to Chapter 165, the zoning ordinance, to add solar photovoltaic power generating facilities, also known as solar farms, to the conditional use list for the RA Rural Areas Zoning District. Under the current regulations, power generating facilities are allowed as a by right use under the definition of a public utility. Solar generating energy facilities are typically privately owned and as such do not fall under the definition of a public utility. The Development Review and Regulations Committee discussed this amendment at their July, August, and September 2017 meetings, and the DRRC agreed with the proposed changes of the text amendment at that time that were presented by staff. The Planning Commission discussed this item on November the 15th and agreed with the proposed changes from the DRRC. The Board of Supervisors, as you all will recall, have discussed this item previously on January the 10th and February the 14th. And in response to that discussion, staff has made revisions to the draft text amendment to reflect that discussion. Since the January 10th and February 14th Board of Supervisors discussion, staff has provided additional clarification within the definition that differentiates a utility-scale solar energy facility from smaller systems that may be designed to offset personal energy consumption on individual properties. We've revised the discontinuance and abandonment provisions. We have further specified in the supplemental use regulations that solar energy facilities shall require a minimum of 6 acres, and we've finally changed the use from a by right use to a conditional use, which would require an application and public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. Following the discussion this evening, staff is seeking direction from the Board of Supervisors as to whether this item is ready to go forward for a public hearing. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for your time.
Questions of Mr. Klein? Yes, sir. Supervisor Dunn.
If we go forward with this, would each CUP be on its own right? This is just dealing with any place in a rural area or an RA area, but then there'd be another discussion on specificity to a particular spot or particular site. Is that accurate?
Correct. You all would be able to consider applications for conditional use permit on a case-by-case basis, taking into account any public comment or any other considerations given to that specific property.
So it's possible that even though it's an RA, and even though I have some concerns, this does not automatically grant, that it just allows for a discussion later.
You are correct, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Lofton.
Point of clarification, I've had a couple of calls about this that I've directed to Mr. Klein. The reason for the 6 acres is to prevent 5-acre lots that may have already been platted to be used for this type of facility. So I just want to clarify that that's why the 6 acres is there.
You are correct. That was the intention of making 6 acres the threshold.
Thank you.
The minimum, that's
The minimum threshold, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Slaughter.
just one comment I would like to add before it does go to public hearing is that we consider a surety bond requirement when the CUPs are issued in the event that we have someone that would abandon the facility. We have a way to go back and have it cleaned up without a lien on a property. I think this would just be much simpler and would give the county much more protection.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I might follow up on that, that bond should reflect the same time frame as the proposal. So if it's a 20-year proposal, 20-year bond. If it comes up for renewal after 20 years, same situation. So the bond should reflect the use of that.
I'm not objecting at all to.
I'm just throwing out a thought,
to
Mr. Chairman.
The idea, but the conditional use permit goes with the land. It's not to the individual. It's perpetual.
Right.
And so you're discussing requiring a perpetual bond.
I get, Mr. Chairman, and we can talk about this, in work session, whatever. My comment or concern is that, as Ms. Slaughter said, if you have an abandonment and then there's a cleanup, who pays for the cleanup? And I think she has a good point when saying that if there's an abandonment, and so if there's another way to achieve that result, whether, the user puts up money until they finish, I'm open to comments and suggestions, but I'm just trying to address the financial issue.
The reason I raise the issue is it will be helpful to planning and the planning commission to have input on this subject if we're going to send it back to them for further work before it goes to public hearing.
All right.
I mean, traditionally, we would put a lien on the property and do what needs to be done to protect our citizens and our community. And the property would sit that way until the bill was paid. I'm not objecting to where you wanted to go.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I mean, in that case, and I'll defer in a second, I might ask for it to go back simply because I'd like to see this issue addressed. For example, if you have a solar farm and it's abandoned, but the person doesn't sell, you have a lien, that lien can be there for a number of years and you still have an eyesore.
That's what I was
So
gonna
if
say.
an entity that has financial capability of setting it up can put aside money to take it down in the future, maybe that's the way to do it. So I'd like to hear some more issues that can possibly deal with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Slaughter.
just a couple comments. In researching some of this with other localities that have implemented surety bond procedure, one, it allows the county not to have to front the money to have the cleanup take place before we're placing the lien on the property, if this would circumvent that. The other thing, it does grant us greater protection.
I just wanted everyone to consider the difference.
Okay.
Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, to that point, I don't know that I want to send it back to the Planning Commission, but maybe the county attorney could advise us as to what means and methods have been used at other places that we might want to consider as in the mix as we go through this public hearing process? Would it have to go back to planning commission,
Well,
or?
it has to go back for them to advise us and hold their public hearing. But would you like to hear the potential options before we send it back to them?
Well, I guess maybe my question should be directed to the county attorney, as he thinks there's any value to delaying it, send it back to the planning commission if has had experience with these types of facilities before, and what that might entail, or maybe the county administrator has some information.
Well, I certainly understand the desire and the intent. What comes to my mind is somewhat analogous, is we require, as a typical requirement when we issue approval for a cell tower, is that if it be abandoned, it be removed, but we don't require a surety. The CUP, there is no time limit on a CUP. If you adhere to the conditions, in theory, it's in perpetuity. So I don't know the legalities or the complexities of requiring that running surety. I don't, whether the county attorney may have some insight in that, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I'll offer a couple thoughts. As far as the running surety, I mean, it could, in perpetuity, it could be imposed. I don't know, I'm not an expert in the economics of this field, but it may well be that it makes it economically not viable. I don't know. The other thing is what exactly abandonment means. If the facility has simply stopped being used, but the equipment is left there in good repair, is that abandonment? And if it's not abandonment, then the county wouldn't have any legal basis to go onto the property. I think it'd be highly unusual for the county to go on property and remove equipment. It's really no different than an industrial facility that might have equipment that's attached to the facility. If the facility is quote-unquote abandoned from use and there's equipment there, as long as it's not, it doesn't rise to the level of being junk, which is really what our ordinance discusses, the county wouldn't be able to remove it anyway.
Go ahead.
I guess one of the conversations I've had is typically what has happened is whomever is installing the equipment would put forth the surety, so it protects the property owner. And I'm just thinking it might be another level of protection that the county wouldn't have to impose a lien. And the same has been done with the monopoles. It's funny that
Must be in a lease situation.
Well, I don't know what the private relationships are, but
Yes, sir.
Chairman.
Supervisor McCarthy.
I think the county attorney makes a good point with regard to the definition of abandonment. I think that's a key to enforcement of the ordinance, and not to discount the discussion with regard to a surety bond. But another question for the county attorney is, do we not have judicial redress to enforce the judicial foreclosure in order to collect on a lien versus letting it sit in perpetuity?
Well, theoretically, we could, although usually if it's a non-tax lien, if it's just a judgment lien, depends on whether it falls in a tax category or not, and even with tax liens, they have to have been delinquent for at least 2 years, and if it's a regular judgment lien, it has to represent a certain percentage of the potential rents of the property, but there are remedies to enforce it. It also remains a lien on the property until the property's sold, and obviously, once the property's sold, the lien's going to get paid because nobody's going to buy the property with a lien outstanding. Again, we've had very few cases of the county having to impose liens on properties for these types of things. Usually, the biggest instance that we've had that I'm familiar with is really when we've had to mow the grass on overgrown properties. But I think we had a property probably about 10 years ago where there was basically an oil spill type situation where the county had to expend resources to do that, but these situations are few and far between.
So if we're going to send it back, we should accompany some direction in that request. Supervisor Dunn.
Mr. Chairman, I'm familiar with something similar in the Midwest, and those that do some solar farming will have like 30-year leases, or 30-year proposals on private land. And so if there's a way to provide a bond for time that's proposed, and then if it ends at that point in time and the reverts to something else, it could end, or if a new entity comes over to take over, they could pick that up. But I mean, I guess I'd like to see a little, I'd like to see if there's something more that can be done, that's all. And I think there might be some options from my limited experience on this, just for consideration.
So, okay. So are there any additional thoughts or desires that would accompany our request to have planning do more work on this?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
specifically, I would like to see us hone in on the definition of abandonment as part of that process.
Has a broader implication to other areas as well. Okay.
And then, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to see if there's a way that the owner, not the county, can pick up the cost in the event that there is abandonment, however that's defined, or if there's just leaving it to deteriorate or does not continue to function as intended. And I know that's broad.
That was the whole goal for the discussion, is to prevent that, yes. All right. Staff have enough to go to work?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think staff might want some board direction on what the board feels it wants abandonment to constitute. Is abandonment stopping using it, or is abandonment that it's falling into disrepair? Because we probably need to know how to write whatever provision needs to be written based on what the board's desire is.
Both of those lines are pretty blurred from my viewpoint.
They're blurred, as well as trying to figure out whether it's one or the other.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
So are we prepared to, yes, sir.
to the county attorney's point, my personal opinion would be that if it's inoperable or in operation, not in operation for up to 2 years, that would be considered abandonment of the property.
We may not have a ready means to ever establish that. It's passive equipment. It doesn't physically move. Well, I guess some of them do move because they tilt toward the sun, but I don't know if we would ever really have the particular expertise to know whether the equipment is in active operation or not. It doesn't really make any noise, doesn't do anything.
Yes, sir.
But Mr. County Attorney, you do know whether what's being produced is being sold. You do know what's being produced is being used.
We would have no access to that private market information. We wouldn't have any subpoena power to access that. That's no different than trying to get somebody's bank information. We can't do it.
Mr. Chairman, if this were tied, though, into a CUP, in which you can define the conditional uses, then could you not, under those circumstances, say that in order to get the CUP, these are some of the requirements?
They could be.
It's where we were. It's where we started.
Which is private, which is the release of private information in order to defend, yes, we have a CUP here, so that's...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a thought, and I apologize if it's rambling, but I'm trying to envision a scenario where one of these solar farms goes in and becomes knowingly abandoned. I'm not sure the county would necessarily be compelled to go remove that equipment unless it was creating some sort of a health hazard or, an active nuisance. In my mind, it's analogous to, a building, a factory, a warehouse that goes dormant or abandoned, until it becomes some sort of a potential risk to health or safety. Granted, some people might think it's not attractive, but at what point would we feel it was a big enough burden or nuisance that we would be compelled to expend taxpayer money to go physically remove that equipment from a private property? I'm just thinking out loud, really.
I understand. From what insight I have, there is some thought in the technical world that these things will have a limited useful life. And that it will be an expensive process to dispose of them at the end. I don't know. So do we have any further thoughts that will help staff. So I think that you've heard the board's desire. I guess it's the best we can do for this evening. Come up with those really sharp things you always come up with and bring it back, please.
We'll be happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
We're not ready to forward it to public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That will bring us to board liaison reports. Are there any? Seeing none, that will bring us to citizen comments on any issue at all that you would like to share. If you could come forward, give us your name, magisterial district, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members.
Ma'am?
Yeah, there you go.
Folks that are listening in can't hear if you're not
Okay.
right in front of it. So, sorry.
My name is Beth Schlapp, and I'm a resident of the Mountain Falls Park subdivision in the Back Creek Magisterial District, Gore Precinct. The reason I'm requesting to speak with you is that I'd like to bring you up to speed on the following information and request your assistance. The Wild Acres Property Owners Association is the POA for the Mountain Falls Park subdivision. Due to many years of prior WAPOA Board of Governors mismanagement of our records and monies, we no longer have the finances to continue to operate through the end of the year or to maintain our roads and common areas. This is the case even though the current WAPOA Board of Governors increased our dues 33 1/3% effective January 1st, 2018. Because of the deplorable state of our roads and POA, myself and former WAPOA Board of Governors Director Ethel Nichols contacted our Back Creek District Supervisor Gary Lofton to inquire about the process of requesting that the Frederick County take over our roads via a sanitary district. Mr. Lofton informed us the law changed last year regarding this process, and we would be the first subdivision requesting this since the new law took effect. Mr. Lofton stated he needed to speak with the county attorney, Rod Williams, for guidance regarding the new process. After speaking with the county attorney, Mr. Lofton sent us an email explaining the first step. We were told we would need to get the signatures of 50 qualified Mountain Falls Park residents on a petition requesting to go sanitary district and then have them verified by the registrar, Rick Miller. The petition was submitted on Tuesday, April 3rd with 66 signatures on it. Mr. Miller verified 63 of the signatures as qualified and returned the petition to the county administrator, Chris Tierney's office, last Wednesday, April 4th. Mr. Lofton has stated the next step would be for him to have the county's Public Works Department come out and evaluate the status of our subdivision's roads and get back to him with a cost estimate. Mr. Lofton stated he would then send out a letter to all property owners within the Mountain Falls Park subdivision delineating what the cost would be for each developed and undeveloped lot for a Mountain Falls Park sanitary district. We were told there would then be a public hearing comment period of 30 days. Then the Public Works Committee would meet and come up with their recommendation that would then be provided to the Frederick County Board of Supervisors. If the numbers come back reasonable and affordable, it is my intention to officially go on the agenda at a later date and formally request the county take us on as a sanitary district. Therefore, I respectfully request that this board allow Mr. Lofton to take the next step and direct the Public Works Department to begin their evaluation of our roads, common areas, and equipment to obtain
It's okay. Go
an
ahead.
actual cost analysis so Mr. Lofton can provide that information to all Mountain Falls Park owners.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. When you're speaking for a group, we allow some time. Thank you. Okay, so this is ongoing. I don't think there are any questions. Did you have anything you'd like to add, sir?
Well, I would like to thank Ms. Schlapp for bringing this to our attention. As she said, I thought this was going to be fairly easy to begin with, but in consultation with the county administrator and the county attorney, state law has changed. It used to be you'd provide your signatures to the judge and the judge would make that decision. Now, as happens many times, the state legislature has, in their infinite wisdom, turned that duty over to the county. And in consultation, like I say, with staff, I find that there's no clear process for us to move forward So as much as I would like to help those in Mountain Falls Park out as quickly as possible, I think we need to have a process by which we, if some other incidents like this would come up, that we do have something that's clearly defined from start to finish so that we feel that we have made the best decision we can. And like I said, I don't want to delay that. The county attorney tells me, well, county administrator tells me that this issue may be brought to us on our agenda at the next meeting, at which time we would decide how to proceed with this.
Thank you, sir. Other comments on any issue whatsoever? Anyone? Ms. Kirk?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Joy Kirk. I'm the president of the Frederick County Education Association and a resident of the Back Creek District. First and foremost, I would like to thank all of you for your hard work on the budget. I know it cannot be an easy process. I have sat through the budget process at both the school board and the Board of Supervisors for 6 years now, and I know what goes into it. I have also attended countless budget sessions over the past 6 years. This is probably the fewest I've had the opportunity to attend was this year. And I know it is not an easy process for either board as they try to assess wants and needs for their various departments. So thank you for the 1 cent tax increase, but I do agree with Supervisor Trout, it wasn't sufficient. I know you had a tough call to make regarding the operational budget. And I will say I am disappointed because it's a matter of balancing the teaching of our students and the roof over their heads. And it's going to be a tough choice for our school board to have to decide what they are going to cut. But I do want to say I appreciate all of your time and effort, and I hope that we as a community can form bonds and move forward to do what is best, not just for the students, but for all of us. Because it's not just about schools, it's about all of our public services. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of all of the needs of all of the constituents from birth to grave. So thank you for your hard work, and I hope that we continue to form relationships and bonds so that we can work to do what is best for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? Seeing no one, we'll close the citizen comment period. Board of Supervisors comments, are there any? Supervisor Dunn.
Mr. Chairman, this year's budget, as we've all talked about, has been a difficult budget. But next year's budget is going to be much more interesting. Next year, we are going to have to deal with the funding of a new elementary school, and that between the costs will be someplace in the neighborhood of $4 million. That's going to be 4 cents. The service cost is going to go from about 14.9 to almost $19 million. That's a $5 million increase. We are going to need to work together as a community to find solutions that work. Mrs. Kirk and I had a lunch earlier today, or a cup of coffee. So I appreciate your comments and the tone of those comments. And we are going to have to find solutions that work. I've made comments about a capital cost recovery. We've had discussions on meals tax. There may be other thoughts and ideas on how to go and deal with the revenue that's going to be needed as this community grows and who pays for it. Some of us on this board will start this process much sooner than we did this year, but just recognize that this is going to be a long, arduous process with many competing interests. And if we all put in our thoughts on how to solve that problem, we can, as a community, try to pull this together to make it work for everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Supervisor Trout.
To that end, thank you, Ms. Kirk, for your comments. And Mr. Dunn, in terms of making sure that all constituents are included in the process, I forwarded an idea to the board earlier yesterday, I believe, or maybe it was today. I actually don't know. It was today? Okay, today, which is to, in some way, survey our constituents before next year's budget season, whether that is sending home a mailing or some kind of online survey to find out what the priorities of our community are. So I'm looking forward to working with the board to figuring out how we might put that into practice, if that's something that the rest of you can support, so we can get more detailed feedback from those constituents that may not be able to attend these meetings regularly or are unaware that they're happening, perhaps, and we can still get their feedback. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? Supervisor McCarthy.
Mr. Chairman, we've heard a lot tonight about all the hard work that went into this budget by the Board of Supervisors, and I think the unsung heroes behind the scenes who've done a ton of work are Mr. Tierney and his staff at the county administration. I just want to thank them for all the hard work and effort you've put into this. I know it's not been easy, and I appreciate all your professionalism and all the work you've done.
Let's not leave out finance and others.
All the county staff.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, everyone else has kind of given their comment on it. As far as this budget goes, you don't get everything you want. You have to pick and choose and work within constraints, and I think that's where we are. The good news is that I've heard everyone here tonight on the board side say we need to work together. We're one community, and we need to come together and sit down and figure out ways to meet all the needs for the Sheriff's Department, for the safety departments, for Parks and Rec, all those things, because we all share in those. And we haven't been real good at that in the past, and I hope we get better at it. It sounds like the board, all the board, I've always been there, and it sounds like they want to move in that direction, and I hope we do. And we'll work through this budget, and there will be changes and additions and deletions as we go through it. It always has been and always will be. So, again, thank all my fellow supervisors. They work very hard at it, and our staff, who work very hard to get us to where we are. It's not a simple task. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I move with adjournment.
To adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Stand adjourned. Thank everyone for all their hard work.